Welcome to the orientation for the 2019 6th International Model UN Human Rights Council Universal Periodic Review. So my name is Chloe. As Hyun-Chan said before, I'm currently working at Human Asia, and this year Human Asia is one of the 4 co-organizers of this year's event, together with Korea University's Human Rights Center, City University of Hong Kong, and International Christian University from Japan. So basically, I'm going to introduce today what the iModel UN UPR is, what you guys can be expecting for the event in August, and what you'll need to start preparing as finalists before then. So this is just a brief summary of contents for tonight. So we've already had our welcoming remarks from our Secretary General. I'm going to give you an introduction about the iModel UN UPR by going through the rules of procedure, key dates, and what you need to prepare. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Human Rights Essay Contest. Then there'll be a video from one of last year's winners, followed by the team building time that we spoke about before, and a brief time for Q&A too. So let's get into the introduction. So before we start talking about the iModel UN UPR, we need to ask a basic question of what is the Universal Periodic Review? So I'm sure all of you guys have a rough idea of this already, given your interest in the event, but just so everybody's on the same page, we're just going to watch a brief video to get you all on the same kind of level.
The Universal Periodic Review is a unique mechanism of the United Nations. This mechanism aims at improving the human rights situation in each of the 193 UN member states. The UPR is a 5-year cycle process comprised of 3 key stages. First, the review in Geneva of the human rights situation in the state under review. Second, the implementation between 2 reviews of recommendations made to the state under review. Third, the assessment at the next review of the implementation of those recommendations and the developments of the human rights situation in the country since the previous review. 3 main documents underpin each review. A national report written by the state under review. In this context, the state is encouraged to conduct national consultations with national civil society in order to reflect their concerns and to comprehensively assess the domestic human rights situation. A compilation by the Office of the High Commission of Human Rights of information from treaty bodies, special procedures, and UN agencies. A summary drafted by the OHCHR based on the information received from national institutions and CSOs. The review in Geneva consists of 3 steps. First, the state is reviewed during 3.5 hours by a working group comprising all UN member and observer states. These states make recommendations on how to improve the human rights situation in the state under review. This exercise results in a draft report containing, on average, 200 recommendations. Second, the draft report is adopted by the working group a few days after the review. Third, the draft report is formally adopted at the Human Rights Council a few months later. At this stage, the state under review must declare which recommendations are supported and which are noted. The UPR is a truly universal process as it reviews all UN member states and takes into consideration all human rights, from civil and political rights to economic, social and cultural rights, regardless of the size or human rights situation in a given state. At the UPR, states are reviewed by states. Nonetheless, civil society, national institutions, the media, and the citizens have a great role to play. They can provide information before the review of their states and assess and support the implementation of recommendations.
Okay, so that was about the actual UPR itself. So now we'll turn to the iModel UN UPR. So the iModel UN UPR follows with other MU conferences in that it is an academic simulation through which participants or delegates can learn about diplomacy, international relations, and the United Nations. So the iModel UN-UPR, however, is a bit unique in that it is the first model UN event that simulates the procedures of the international human rights system through looking at the inner workings of the Universal Periodic Review. So in the same way as the actual UPR process, selected states, known as the states under review, will have their present human rights situations assessed through each state's adherence to the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights instruments, voluntary pledges and commitments, and applicable international humanitarian law. So as I'm sure you guys all know, the states under review within our event are the Republic of Korea, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the People's Republic of China, and Japan. So in exchange, we have invited participants from Korea, Japan, and Hong Kong to take part. And we hope that it will be a cooperative and hands-on learning experience for you guys to learn more and become more global citizens through interacting with students from all over the world. So just to go into a bit more detail, our goals and objectives for the event can be summarized as following. So firstly, we hope that you guys will use this as an opportunity to become more responsible members of the international community through expanding your understanding of human rights situations from the perspective of your state under review. But in addition to your state under review, we also hope that it will allow you to increase your awareness of human rights issues in the other countries and broaden your view of the world through interactive discussions of current human rights challenges faced in each. We also hope that the event will allow you to more properly understand the importance of the UPR process as an effective mechanism, but also to kind of see where it could be improved. And then finally, we hope that it will allow you to develop your academic and practical skills, mainly through research and public speaking, but also regarding your writing, critical thinking, teamwork, and leadership skills. So this has briefly been mentioned to you already, so just to give you a quick overview of the event, we will have 40 participants taking part, so that will be 20 teams in total, who are either from or residing in Korea, Hong Kong, or Japan. The co-organizers have spoken about it a bit already. Our sponsors this year are the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the UN Human Rights Office of Seoul, and the Daesan Agricultural Foundation. And the awards that we have on offer this year, we have 4 team awards. So that will be for you within your 2-person teams or delegates. And then we have a Best Teamwork Award, which will be for all the teams within the same state under review. So let's go now into the rules of procedure. So the first thing we need to kind of look at is what is the main difference between the actual Universal Periodic Review and our event. So throughout its cycles, the actual Universal Periodic Review reviews the human rights records of all 193 UN member states. The reviews are conducted by the UPR Working Group, which consists of the 47 members of the UN Council. However, any UN member state can take part in the discussions and dialogue ongoing with the reviewed states. Each state review is assisted by groups of 3 states, which are known as the Troikas. And from the second cycle onwards of the UPR, the time given for the interactive dialogue between the recommending states and the state under review is 3.5 hours, so 3 hours and 30 minutes. And there is additionally no kind of limitation or agenda to the sorts of human rights issues that can be addressed within the actual UPR. So naturally, within our model UPR, we have to make a number of adjustments for practicality and simplification purposes. So firstly, unlike the actual UPR process, we only look at the human rights records of 4 selected states under review, mainly looking at those within the Northeast Asia region. Additionally, we only have 20 recommending states who have been roughly selected on a geographical basis from each of the continents and areas. And unlike the original UPR process, the UPR Secretariat, so the co-organizers, have selected 5 key thematic issues for you guys to address throughout the process. So this year, our 5 thematic issues are the rights of persons with disabilities, the rights of the child, technology and the right to privacy, women's rights, and the rights of prisoners and detainees. So besides these amendments, however, the iModel UN-UPR is for the most part compromised in the same format as the actual UPR process. So just like the actual UPR, we have our states under review who go through an interactive discussion with other UN member states. So as I said before, we'll have the participants here representing the ROK and the DPRK, whilst Hong Kong will represent China and Japan will mainly be represented by participants from Japan. So each state under review consists of two-person team delegations who are to address one of the 5 thematic issues. So either the rights of persons with disability, the rights of the child, women's rights, technology and the right to privacy, or the rights of prisoners and detainees. So although each team will have their own thematic issue to address, the teams within the same state under review will be expected to cooperate with the other teams and work together in order to prepare the national report, which I'll talk more about later, and respond well to the questions raised by the recommending states within the UN Working Group. So each team addressing a certain thematic issue will answer from the standpoint of one of several delegations. So for instance, in the case of South Korea, if the team was looking at the rights of persons with disability, they can look at this through the Ministry of Health and Welfare, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Land, Transport and Maritime Affairs, or the Ministry of Employment and Labour. And then the North Korea, you can see, has its own respective ministries to look at, and then it's the same for China and Japan too. So you can see throughout these tables that this is the same for each of the thematic issues. Okay, we've all got a copy of this, so you can check it out later. So in addition to working as a delegate within a state under review, you will also be taking on the role of a recommending state within the UN Working Group. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 20 recommending states within the iModels UN-UPR's working group who have been mainly picked randomly based on geographical location. And you can see that these are the states that have been selected this year to work as recommending states within the working group. So like I said, all teams will have to take on their second role, and all members of the UN working group as a recommending state will need to submit an advance and an additional question, which I'll talk about more later, related to your assigned thematic topic for that round. So each delegation team will be randomly assigned a recommending state later on after we've decided the teams and your thematic issues, head of delegation, and so on. So unfortunately, given that you will act as a recommending state 3 times, your delegation will only address a total of 3 of the 5 thematic issues. So the format of the finals on day 1 will look a little something like this. So on day 1, the 2 states under review are the Republic of Korea and China. So the Republic of Korea will be the first to be reviewed, meaning that all other delegates at that time will be taking on their respective roles as a recommending state of the UN Working Group. So before the review begins, the head of delegation will present the national report, which is essentially, to summarize briefly for now, an opening statement looking at the overall human rights conditions and policies of the state under review regarding all of the thematic issues. Then we'll move on to the main event, so the review itself. So on day 1, like I said, the first state will be the Republic of Korea. So each 2-person delegate team within the state under review will address one of the thematic issues. So you can see with the color code that we have here, each recommending state will firstly pose an advanced and then an additional question related to their assigned thematic issue. So in this example here, it would be that New Zealand, Algeria, and Ethiopia would be addressing the issue of the rights of persons with disabilities. And then Venezuela, Russia, and Sri Lanka would be asking South Korea a question about the rights of the child. So the review of China, which will happen on the same day after the lunch break, takes the same format. So each 2-person delegation will address a given thematic issue via the given ministries below. So participants whose state under review is either the ROK, the DPRK, or Japan at this time will be taking on their secondary role as a recommending state and address one of the 5 thematic issues that we've addressed before. So again, before the review kicks off, China will present their national report regarding the present status of China on all of the 5 thematic issues. So after the national report, we have 2 rounds of the review. So in the first round, each recommending state will pose their advanced question to the state under review. So the recommending state has 1 minute to present this question to the state under review. On day 1, for instance, with South Korea, New Zealand would be the first state to present their advanced question to the ROK regarding the rights of the persons with disabilities. Then the responding delegation within the ROK has 15 seconds to structure their answer to the question, and then they will have 2 minutes to present their answer. So there'll be a timer so that each delegation and the state under review can see how much time they have for presenting their questions and their comments. And then after the delegation has addressed New Zealand's questions, we'll then move on to Venezuela, who will ask the appropriate delegation within the ROK a question regarding the rights of the child. And then it'll proceed in the same way. So we'll then have a second round for additional questions. So this will proceed in the same way as the first round with the advanced questions, but this time, after the recommending state has presented their question and the delegation has responded, the recommending state may make further questions and comments if there is time remaining. So it should do this by raising its nameplate, which will be in front of you, up in the air. The UPR chair group, which will be sat in the corner here, will decide if there is enough time for this. So if they decide that there is not enough time for the further question, the recommending state will be asked to condense their statement into a brief recommendation or a comment only. So I have an example of this to show you guys.
Speakers is the distinguished representative of Jordan. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The state of Jordan is concerned of the legal framework and working level case management of child trafficking. Local police are reported to refuse registering cases until they are solved to cover up the numbers. It is also concerned that these cases are handled as administrative issues rather than criminal prosecutions. What efforts will Chinese government make to improve legal frameworks on these working level issues? Thank you.
Thank you, the delegation of Jordan, for your concern about this issue. First of all, according to the 2018 Working Report of the Supreme People's Court, highlighting relevant achievements within the period of 2012 to 2017, one of the achievements is that the court has made a statement regarding the severe punishment of crimes against women as well as children. In regards to the sale and trafficking of children, the Chinese government contends that it has taken effective measures to prevent and severely punish crimes in the trafficking of women and children in its national report on children development, as mentioned by our other delegates who handle rights of the child. Furthermore, China has long been committed to cracking down on human trafficking and criminalizing it. The criminal law stipulates that those who traffic in women and children shall be sentenced to a fixed term of imprisonment of at least 5 years and with a maximum sentence of 10 years. The death penalty shall be imposed in particular when the circumstances are serious. The Criminal Law Amendment number 9, which came into effect in 2015, clearly stipulates that the purchase of trafficked women as well as children is a crime punishable by either imprisonment for at most 3 years, criminal detention, or control. This clearly reflects the intensified efforts of China in fighting against the trafficking of women and children in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Vietnam. I was informed that you had around 27 seconds left. So we will give you the floor again. Jordan? For around 27 seconds. You have the floor again.
Thank you. So in relation to the first question and also the second question, the State of Georgia is concerned of the forced repatriation of North Korean defectors who are victims of trafficking and sent by the Chinese authority. So could you please give us a...
Provide them sufficient funds for supporting their families.
Thank you. Yes, I recognize Julia again. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chairs. Government of Algeria would like to make a recommendation to the government of China. Even though a one-child policy was abolished a few years ago, people left behind, in other words, people who don't have a birth certificate or trafficked and forced marriage or forced to work. So government of Algeria would like encourage government of China to take measures to combat human trafficking of people left behind and protect their rights. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is...
Okay, well, it's not working, but basically what happened is Jordan had a question that they presented to China, I believed it was, and China gave their answer for a period of 2 minutes, and then the UPR chair was going to move on to the next state, but they noticed that Jordan had raised their nameplate up in the air. And after checking, they'd noticed that for the 1 minute period that each recommending state is assigned, they'd only used up 30 seconds of that, so they were allowed to use the remaining 30 seconds to ask a follow-up question. So again, after the lunch break, on day 1, we'll turn to China. So the delegations within the Republic of Korea will change to assume their role as a recommending state. And the delegates who are coming from Hong Kong will then assume their role as a state under review. So they will have to address the same thematic issues, but with ministries from China and with the recommending states slightly different. So the recommending states that gave recommendations for both the Republic of Korea and China, so that mainly concerns the delegates from North Korea, will not be given the same topic within both reviews. So for example, if we look here, we can see that in this instance, Russia has been assigned to talk about the topic of the rights of persons with disabilities. But in the instance before, even though Russia was still a recommending state, their topic was the rights of the child. Okay, so after, get rid of the advert. After both reviews have been concluded for the states under review that day, the states under review will then conclude with their outcome report, which, to summarize it in a different way, is kind of a closing statement. So we expect that you guys will prepare these in advance, but with the outcome report, in order to accurately reflect and take on board the recommendations that you've heard that day, the states under review will have 30 minutes to amend their pre-constructed outcome report to take on board what has been said. So then each state under review will present their outcome report for 5 minutes from the deputy head of delegation, again, which will be decided later on. So because that was a lot of information, I'll just run this down as follows. So the format of each review is it is a 100-minute interactive dialogue. We will have the national report to start things off, which will be presented for 5 minutes from the head of delegations from the state under review. We'll then have the first round of questions. So this will involve a 1-minute question being presented by each of the recommending states, followed by a 2-minute response from the delegate, the relevant delegate from the state under review. We'll then move on to the second round of questions, where each recommending state will again present a 1-minute question, and there'll be a 2-minute response from the state under review, but the recommending states in this round are able to make follow-up questions if there is enough time. So then after the review has been concluded, we'll have 30 minutes for the state under review to amend their final report. And then we'll have the 5-minute outcome report presented by each deputy head of delegations from the state under review that day. So now that I hope you understand roughly how it's all going to go down, I'll turn to the key dates and what you need to start preparing in advance. So mainly these advanced and additional questions. So just to show you the brief outline of how the main events will go down, we will have a mini orientation and social night on the Sunday, the 11th of August. So this is mainly a chance for you guys to meet the participants coming from Japan and Hong Kong. So then we will have the first day of the finals on Monday, the 12th of August. And the second day of finals will be the day after, and both of these will be held at Korea University. So on the last day, we'll have a human rights tour that will likely be held at Sodaemun Prison History Museum. And then we'll also have a panel discussion, kind of interactive dialogue session with human rights experts afterwards. And this again will be held at Korea University. So please note that all of these events are compulsory. If you miss out on any of them without a good reason, that may result in you getting penalty points towards your final score. So again, this is just more details on how the finals will be divided. This is for day 2. And then this is briefly to demonstrate how we will conduct things on day 3. So what do you guys need to prepare for the finals before then? So as your role as a state under review, you will need to work together with other teams to present your national report. You will also need to start doing your research to prepare your answers to potential advanced questions from the recommending states, and you will also need to work together to construct an outcome report. As your role as a recommending state, you will need to make these advanced and additional questions. So as I mentioned before, the national report that will be presented at the start of each review is not so much as a report as it is like a mini speech. So this is expected to detail the overall human rights conditions, current issues, and government policy of the state under review regarding all 5 of the thematic issues. So it should include issues discussed during the most recent UPR review, so that is the actual one, and it will be delivered by your head of delegation at the beginning of the session. So we will also circulate this to all the other teams in advance before the actual finals themselves. So just to give you some examples about how to structure this national report, you can find more examples on our website, but here is an example of how the Republic of Korea opened up their review last year. So your national report should not include any kind of greetings or recommendations or other ritual remarks. It's just a concise summary of the different present conditions of the human rights issues that time. And there isn't any kind of word limit, but this has got to be under 5 minutes. It should include information, reflections, and the implementation status of recommendations received most recently. And we're asking that you submit this file by the 5th of August to info@modelupr.com. So I suggest you guys start figuring out how to approach this today if possible. So this is an example of an advanced question. So this is kind of an example that we saw last year again. This was from Mongolia towards the state under review of South Korea in regards to women's rights. So you can see that this team has done their research, they have statistics, it's well phrased. So again, you can find more kind of examples regarding how to structure advanced questions on the website. And then here we have an example of an additional question. So you'll notice that it doesn't have to link directly to the question that was presented before, but it still needs to pertain to the wider given thematic issue that you're addressing that time. So your advanced questions will be assigned per delegation, so per 2-person team, not for the whole state under review. Again, remember that you have only 1 minute to pose these questions, so they shouldn't be too long. And please note that you cannot make revisions to your questions once you've submitted them. The only time when we will allow this is if 2 teams have submitted very similar or identical questions, and then we'll ask the team that submitted it latest to change their question to something else instead. So, like I mentioned before, at the end of the review, the states under review will also be asked to present an outcome report. And this time, this will be delivered by the Deputy Head of Delegation at the end of the session. So again, it should summarise the issues discussed at the review, and it should also outline some of the commitments that the state will therefore take in order to address some of the issues that have been identified during its review. Again, like I said before, you do have time to amend this after the actual review itself has concluded, but we would like for you to submit a draft version of this by the 5th of August in the following format. Again, this is a brief example of how the Republic of Korea last year structured their outcome reports. Again, it should not exceed 5 minutes, and it should follow the same format as before. So, abiding by the third person, no greetings, nothing casual, and so on. So, in addition to taking part in the UPR finals, this event also includes a human rights essay contest. So this is judged independently from the iModel UN UPR finals themselves. So unlike the main event, where you'll be judged as part of a team, this is an independent event. And basically, we hope that this will give you guys the chance to present and explore your own perspectives on human rights issues linked to your state under review. So the topic will look something like this for the human rights essay. So we want you to kind of look at a specific human rights issue linked to the state that you represented, and think of how to solve this issue through discussing the advantages and disadvantages in using international human rights protection mechanisms. So this human rights issue does not have to be one of the thematic issues that you addressed. It can be something that you find more interesting perhaps, but it should still link back to your state under review. So we ask that all finalists take part in this competition, and for each state under review, the best essay will be selected to advance to the finals. So on day 2 of the UPR finals, we'll have time for the authors of the selected essays to present on their papers for 5 minutes. And then after the jury has listened to all of the presentations, they will select a winner, and they will be assigned first prize and get the grand prize, whilst all of the others who made it through to the finals to present their papers will be given the co-organizers award. So this is a basic outline for how you might want to structure this essay. So this was the winner from last year. You can find the full essay online on our website. So you can see that they have an introduction outlining the human rights issue and its importance. Then they delved into the problems and solutions. Then they looked at the important aspect of this for us, which is the international human rights mechanisms and how they might be able to alleviate the problem, followed by a conclusion. So in terms of referencing for our essays, we're not fussy. You can pick whatever you like as long as you stay consistent. But naturally, we do not allow plagiarism. And if we find that you have plagiarized your essay, we will automatically exclude you from being considered for the finals. So now that I've gone through the basic rules of procedures and the key dates, we have a video from last year's winners, which I hope will work.
Hello everyone, this is Min-Seok Park. I am currently studying political science and international relations at Korea University as an undergraduate student, and I was last year's awardee at iModel UN UPR. So today I'm going to give you some basic tips. So there are 4 basic tips that I prepared for you. So let's get started. The first tip that I'd like to give to you is that you have to do a lot of research. So while doing research, there might be a lot of sources, so it will take a lot of time. So you better start before when it gets really close to the actual competition. So I suggest you do your research at least before 2 weeks before the competition. And when doing the research, there are some information that is really important and others that are not really important. So what you have to do is that you have to select some information that is actually really important, because you cannot get all the information into your brain or into your sources. So I recommend you to actually prepare some and focus more on the actually more important information. And second tip that I'd like to give to you is that you have to be a bit impromptu when actually participating in the conference, because when participating in the competition, you cannot prepare all the information and you do not know what questions that the other delegates are going to ask to you. So you better be impromptu, and you have to be impromptu. And frankly speaking, in the last year's competition, there were some questions that I was not really aware of when the other delegates asked me. So when the delegates asked me, what I really tried was that I tried to not show that I was embarrassed to the professors or other delegates, but I tried to be really impromptu. And this point leads to the third tip that I'm going to give to you today. And the third tip is that you have to be really diplomatic when you're participating in this competition. That why this third tip is connected to the second tip is that you could be embarrassed when you get some questions that you are not really aware of. Then be diplomatic as possible, so that when the subdelegates ask you very sharp questions that you are not really aware of, then just say that this delegate is very grateful that the delegate of somewhere has actually given a very sharp and excellent questions, like so on. And then just try to say that the delegate will prepare for such parts and so on. So other than that, when you're participating in the competition, you are not participating as yourself, but actually you're participating as a delegate of one country. So you have to be aware that you are representing your nation and your state. So whenever you are calling other delegates, you should not call them as like you, but you should rather call them as Your Excellency or the delegate of somewhere and so on. And be polite to other delegates. And what I really felt from last year's competition was that the logic is important, of course. Logic is important, but being diplomatic is more important than being logical, because when you actually look at the actual UN conferences, there are many diplomatic scenes which that they use those very fancy quotes, and as far as I remember, those were really emphasized by the human nature and so on in last year's competition. So I think it'll be a nice tip for you to be diplomatic and be polite to other people. And the last tip that I'd like to give to you is that you have to enjoy this conference and this competition, because, well, of course, getting the award and being the awardee, that is important, of course. I'm really aware of that. That is important. But if you do not enjoy this conference, then I'm pretty sure that getting any award actually is not, it doesn't matter at all. So rather than being so emphasized or being focused on being obsessed on getting the award, there are so many nice people in the competition and the conference, like professors and other friends from all the countries, like China and Japan, and then Korea as well. So try to interact with such nice friends and try to learn some nice points that the other friends have, which you do not have. And there are also social nights and human rights tour in the competition. So in all the events that is in the competition, you should enjoy the competition, because I am very firm that such are nice experiences for you. So those 4 tips to go over: first, do your research, and second, you could be impromptu, and third, be diplomatic as a delegate of each country, and last but not least, you should enjoy this competition. With those 4 tips, I hope all of you enjoyed this year's competition and conference pretty well. Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes the brief introduction regarding the rules of procedure and key dates and so on. So now I think we're going to go straight into the team building activities. I'm sure you guys have lots of questions, but we will take those as we go around, and also we'll have a time for Q&A later on. So I'll pass you back to my colleague now so we can get started on the team building process.
So before moving on to team building session, we will have the Q&A sessions first. And also there were some video clips that didn't work. In the middle of the presentation, I will definitely share the video clips of all of you guys on the at the official website, and with the additional explanation about the situations. And any question? Yes.
Well, answering these questions, are we supposed to live like in a perfect world or be like the country? For example,
Yeah, could you reiterate your question again? Yes, sir.
Now it's working. So are we supposed to play like we're in the perfect world, or is it more from the country's point of view? For example, if you look at North Korea answering many of these questions, they might deny something that we actually have facts that do exist. So what is the approach that we should take?
So yeah, naturally North Korea is not going to be like, well, according to the Freedom Report, we have terrible freedom. No, you should definitely write it from their perspective. So if they see the issue as something that they're adequately dealing with, say that. And then no doubt a recommending state will call you out and be like, hey, but what about this, this, and this? And then for the people working within the DPR team, it is then their decision to kind of decide how to answer that in a convincing way that would be something that the DBRK might actually say. So it's not a perfect world. Any other questions? Yeah?
Okay. So if I understood well, I'm a little bit confused about the head deputy and the head of delegation. Is there like a head of the whole delegation and then there's one for each team, or how is it?
No, so you have your 5 teams or delegates together when you stay under review, right? So when you get together a little bit later with the other teams within your state under review, you guys should decide together which 2-person team will take on the roles as the head of delegation and the deputy head of delegation, and then they will present the national report and the outcome report respectively. So it's not per delegate, it's per your whole state under review team.
Hello?
I think it takes a few seconds to warm up.
Hello? So, 2 very brief questions. The first one, so if a team is head of the delegation, it will also be one of the ministers, or is only going to be the head of the delegation?
Yeah, they'll still take on a role within the ministry.
Okay. And if I understood correctly, out of the documents that we have to prepare, only the nation statement can be viewed by everyone, like the report, the nation report, that can be viewed by everyone.
Yeah.
What about the questions and the outcome?
No, then.
Okay.
So when it comes to the national report, there will be the open through the website. So everybody can check out the national report submitted by each state under review. But when it comes to the outcome report, we will receive the drafted version of the outcome report, but the drafted version of the outcome report will be not opened. But just regardless of the drafted version of the outcome report, during the finals, you will have the 30 minutes to finalize your outcome report before finally addressing the outcome report before the audiences and the jury members.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions as well. The first one is regarding being diplomatic. For example, if you're passionate about a certain topic now, you aren't exactly showing or referencing your emotions towards someone, but you are really passionate about this human rights topic, so you get a little bit wound up, but will that lead to deduction of points in a way, or is that okay? But should you kind of stay calm throughout your whole conference? Oh, you do.
So I think the important thing is to remember, if you look at like the actual way that member states within the UN interact, they're not swearing at each other, they're not shouting at each other, but it's very clear if they disagree, you know? But you can see kind of from references online that there's always this level of acting diplomatic, even if the state goes, I disagree with everything that you've done in the country, you completely messed up, they'll still end with, thank you very much, Your Excellency. You know, it's always that kind of level that you need to kind of maintain. So I think it's fine to express your anger or disagreement as long as it's diplomatic, if you get what I mean by that.
And the second one is, if I understand correctly, we are 10 members or 10 people within one state under review. So in order to finalize the national statement, we need to get together somehow before the competition and submit it, right?
Yes.
So it's really up to us to get it done and submit it.
Yes.
All right.
Google
And
Doc might help.
yes,
Yeah.
And as to the first question, I would like to add some additional points. I mean, the diplomatic attitude will be counted by the jury members. So, for example, you cannot really be an activist, the fervent activist, just in some specific thematic issues. You should really be diplomatic, just reflecting the real perspective of the member state. So that will be counted, as I said earlier, like just 10 points for the diplomatic attitude.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, I have another question. Regarding the essays, did I understand well, like we all have to participate, or is it,
Yeah, it is
just encouraged?
mandatory.
Okay, thank you.
But it's not that long. You can just check out the
yeah.
exemplary essays.
Okay.
And
So I have kind of two very brief questions about the. So first one is about the essay question. So on behalf of one team, do we need to submit the one essay, or do we need to submit the essay individually?
When it comes to the human rights essay contest, every finalist individually just submits their own human rights essay to us.
Thank you. And the next one is, are we able to use the electronic devices at that day?
We already distributed the delegate handout to you, all of you, and there is the code of conduct. Electronic gadgets and electronic devices are prevented to use, so we will distribute stopwatches to all of you to check out how long has been left to go. So yeah, during the break time, between the review sessions, you can definitely use the electronic gadgets and devices for further research. Yes.
The essay doesn't have to be one of the 5 main topics, or like the right of person with disabilities. It has to be one of those, or can I like just write about
human rights essays?
The essay that we have to write.
Essay topics are quite, up to you. As long as you write about the human rights challenges in the state under review you present.
So it doesn't have to be one of these 5, right?
Oh, really? Oh, sorry. My misunderstanding. Yes, you should really choose one of the 5 thematic issues.
Thematic issues we are covering for this UPR.
Okay.
Yeah, for human rights essay as well.
Okay, thank you.
We will double check with the jury members. Sorry.
In terms of the advanced and additional questions, you said that if we have the redundant time, then the delegation could actually ask, use up their redundant time. Then on their delegation, on state under review, will they still have the same 2 minutes time to respond and 30 seconds to prepare with the redundant time? Or will the time constraints be different?
I think your question is about the additional questions?
Yeah.
So the first round of the additional questions, the 2 minutes is allowed for the state under review to respond to the questions. And so if they use up the 2 minutes, they cannot really respond to the questions any longer. But under these circumstances, what if the recommending state just used, let's say, 10 seconds for the first question, just 50 seconds in total are left to go. So, but instead of raising another question, the second question, they can present the recommendations to the state under review. So 2 minutes only is allowed for the state under review to respond to the questions, and 1 minute is allowed for the recommending state.
So what I'm saying is that like if the recommending state has like asked about 10 seconds and the state under review has fully responded on 2 minutes, then it means that the state under review has used up its time, but while the recommending state still has its redundant time. So on that term, what will the state under review have, like in terms of the redundant time? Like will they still have 2 minutes or will,
The state under review can do anything. So cannot really do anything. So, but instead, the recommending state can present the recommendations.
Oh, so will they not be able to respond?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So that's why I think one of the tips from the last year winner, you should really be diplomatic in that regard as well.
So yeah, maybe like when you're working as
the states under review, maybe keep in mind that if you use all your time up in one go, you won't be able to answer again. So kind of maybe keep that in mind on the second round. In the first round, it doesn't matter because you can't ask further questions anyway, so feel free to use the entire 2 minutes up in one go. But in the second round, just keep in mind that there could be further comments and questions.
Can we have with us like a paper with data and stuff that we have collected during the actual day of the conference or not? Like if I found some statistics on child labor, for example, can I bring it to the day?
Yeah, okay. Yes. Yes, you can bring it to the table.
Okay.
Any further questions?
So we will move on to the team building session.